All right, so now the recording started. Yeah, so this is going to be more of a talk. I think anyone who wants to write out things should have a notebook and pen ready. This is going to be a lot on work habit and somewhat mindset because you kind of have to start with the mindset and understand. You have to be able to understand yourself in order to fix yourself, so to speak. Um, but there was a study that just came out where people were testing rats. And what they did is they put the spring on the tail of the rat and they put the rats in this tube. Now, what they did is they tied a string to the spring and they were able to test how hard the rat pulled on to get something. So basically the rat wasn't able to go anywhere, and on one end of the tube they put the scent, they sprayed a bunch of air in with the scent of peanut butter, and the rat pulled really hard. These are starving rats, by the way. The starving rats pulled really hard. They rated it, and then they did it again, but they put the scent of peanut butter on one side and the scent of a cat on the other side, and they said it was like 10 times the force that the rat pulled towards the peanut butter. For people who are big into like the mental health and mental, like kind of like the self-help type stuff, that study's huge because it shows that not only do people need, and potentially people, these are rats of course, but I think inherently in us we don't just need a motivator, but we need the negative motivator as well. And I've always believed that too. I got to a point, I think, where I would open my bank account and look at it and say, fuck, I'm making phone calls. And I would get on the phone and start making a ton of phone calls. But then there are other times where I'm like, man, I really want to go to Hawaii. I want to go 2 times a year, 3 times a year. That's so motivating, even thinking about it. And so I'm going to go make all my phone calls. I'm going to go knock on doors. I think people need both, because as much as people get excited about, the future, I think more often than not, it's not enough of a motivator. So you have to figure out, what is the negative motivator too? What happens if you don't close any deals in the next 6 months? What goes through your head? What happens if you don't close a deal in the next year? What goes through your head? I think if you post on social media and talk about how you are a real estate agent, and maybe you work another job and you're like, well, I could still pay my bills, but if I post about it, and people start to notice that I'm not selling anything, I mean, that's kind of embarrassing. So you don't want to find things that are going to bring you down personally and destroy your self-confidence. But at the same time, you need to find the things that are the negative motivator that you need to run away from, right? For me, I hated the fact that I'd have to look at my bank account. It was a goal for me to stack enough money that I didn't have to look at my bank account, because that stressed me out, right? So it's the positive and the negative. But everyone is motivated very differently. I used to be on a real estate team where the coach of the team, or the head of the team, which you two were on that as well, he was motivated by people who talked very sternly to him, and that's how he then tried to motivate everyone else. But that's not how everyone else is motivated. And it's important for us as our independent contractors, not employees, right? We're self-employed, so you need to employ yourself by finding out what motivates you, right? You need to figure out, hey, if I'm self-employed, how do I need to motivate myself as my own employee, right? Whatever that is, negatively and positively, you got to figure that out, because then it's going to help you figure out what work you need to do and be more disciplined. Because I think discipline eventually will become a habit, and the work you do will become a habit, but you got to build up that habit, and there's no way to build the habit if you're not motivated to do it. So a lot of the work we put in this business, the downside is you have no idea if it's going to work. And a lot of times it's the work is something brand new. So it's very uncomfortable, which is why you need a negative and positive motivator to get yourself to do the work, right? I don't know if any of you are good at playing soccer, but if you're not, and you've never really played soccer, and I took you out to a soccer field and we started playing soccer, it's going to feel really uncomfortable. I used to take new people who were in my unit, in my platoon in the Army, and I would make them do water training, where I tied weights around them, made them pass weights around. I intentionally wanted to make them as uncomfortable as they could, because they eventually get comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? They go in the water. When I went to the dive school, they pretty much like tortured us in the pool, so that if we ever felt uncomfortable getting tossed around in the ocean, we were comfortable with it because we had already been through a worse experience, and we just got used to the discomfort and we were able to just trudge on. So how do people do really well in this industry? A lot of times they stick it out. They get to year 3 and they just become uncomfortable with the uncomfortable, or they become comfortable with the uncomfortable, the tough transactions, the, showing houses to a new client who just disappears after you show them 5 or 6 houses, and so on. So definitely you want to figure out and take some time to write out what are your negative motivators, what are your positive motivators. But then you have to just realize, like, hey, this isn't going to be comfortable. I think a lot of times people will say, oh, that was weird. A lot of times people will say things like, hey, I'm having a hard time being successful in this business. What is it that, and Brittany, I'm recording this, so I'll send you the link so that you can watch the first part. But
thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Very fine. Yeah, we all have busy lives. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times people will say things like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm meant to do this or whatever," because things are hard, and we often forget that it's supposed to be hard. It's something brand new. We would never tell our kid when they pick up, try playing a sport for the first time, "Oh, it's hard. Okay, then you're not supposed to do this." So it's the same thing with any type of business or anything that you do. It's that a lot of times people will start businesses based on something they're already good at. Right? You get a lot of people from other countries that come here and start restaurants. A Filipino place that I'm looking at right now. Why do they start that place? Probably because they're good at cooking Filipino food. And that's okay. But in this business, you're probably not good at selling real estate right away. And so you do need to take some time to, one, realize your positive motivators, your negative motivators, but also realize, hey, I need to recognize and identify that I'm not going to be comfortable with a lot of the work, and I need to get used to being uncomfortable. So with that, you kind of have the mindset of, I'm a hustler, right? And when you start to really project that in your mind, I am a hustler. Then when work starts getting very busy and you're like, man, I am running around, you get proud of yourself because, right? You said you're a hustler. What are you doing? You're hustling. You're working hard. It gets tiring. You're at inspections for the same house for inspections for a 4th time, like Chanel is. You end up getting proud of yourself. It's like, I hate when agents especially say, "Oh, I'm not tech savvy," when I'm trying to teach them the CRM. Well, the more that you say you're not tech savvy, the harder it is for you to try to learn how to do this. The second that the CRM becomes a little too complicated, you're going to get very frustrated, and you're probably going to, give up on trying to learn it. So you need to have the mentality of, I can learn how to do anything. I'm a hustler. And from there, it'll be easier to, subconsciously handle the work and the rejection that you may get in this business. So with all that being said, when it comes to the work, you got to find things that you can control, that you can do, things that you can control more of the outcome that you can do, right? I think you also have to be aware that it's very natural for us to take the easiest approach, right? When I was, not to keep bringing up the military, but when I was in the Army, we used to set up our ambush points on places that we knew was the path of least resistance. So if we knew that there was this cutout trail, or if an enemy was moving through this area, they were probably going to take this one path because it's just easier to walk that way. There's less bushes, there's less trees, there's less crap for them to walk through. So they're going to go this way. So we're going to set up our ambush up on here. We're going to go and we're going to do that. Now, if we didn't want to be ambushed, we would set up our, places where we would sleep, our patrol bases on the worst locations ever. The side of a mountain in the thorn bushes, that's where we're sleeping tonight because it's the path of most resistance, to get to it. So it's the same thing. And I'm saying this because I think a lot of times people will post some things on social media. Not that I'm saying it's bad, but that's the only thing they will do. And I really think that that is the path of least resistance because it's so easy just to post, here's the summer kickoff event, and then wait and hope that people register. And then you find out people don't. And the reason why, I think it's great to do that, to post it, but it is, you got to recognize it's the path of least resistance, but it's also an outcome that you cannot control a little bit easier, right? It's you have more control of the outcome if you individually invite people, right? When I post on social media, here's our next event, or here's a link to my home evaluation on our website, you're more likely, you're betting that people are going to see it. You're hoping people are going to see it rather than open their Instagram, they look at 2 posts, and then they never see your post. You can increase the odds of people seeing it and actually clicking on it and doing it if you send it to them, right? So if I'm trying to make a goal for my daily work habits, I can't make a goal based on outcome, right? I can't always control outcome. If I make a goal, I'm going to sell 6 million this year in deals or 15 million in deals. I think that's great. And I would quantify it so that you have some type of motivator. Like, what is the projected income on that? And that is your motivator to want to do that. But at the same time, you can't really control it. Well, how do I sell that many houses? Well, I'm going to invite 100 people to every single one of our events. I'm going to take, every lead I can. I'm going to try to invest, some of my money into leads myself. I'm going to make phone calls on our lead pond once a week. After a year, I can go back and I can analyze what really worked for me and how do I double and triple down to hit my goals, right? But that's all stuff that you can control. And so that's why the first year you want to do as much as you possibly can so that you figure out first year or two what works for you. That way you can then say, okay, last year I knocked on 100 doors and I got 2 listings. So you're telling me that if I needed to close 10 listings next year, I need to do, someone help me, 500 doors. I need to knock on 500 doors. I can quantify it a little easier. I'm going to even make it 600 just to give myself a little bit more of a guarantee. That's how you control that. And so when I look at things that I can do, once again, it's very common. I'm going to repeat this so many times that I think people post a couple real estate things on social media, and they may not really think it consciously, but subconsciously they're thinking, I'm hoping I get business from this, and that would be amazing. But I think you're setting yourself up for failure. I would much rather, you should post on social media, but also do things that you feel that you can control to grow your business. I can control the people I invite and how many people I'm going to invite to our next event. I can control doors I knock. I can control how often I call on the lead pond or send text messages to the lead pond or emails. I can control how fast I accept or deny leads on OpCity, right? I talked to someone that I added to OpCity. He was getting frustrated that he wasn't getting anything because a couple of years ago, he used to get tons of OpCity leads. He's closed like 4 deals with them. I said, well, how often do you open the app like I told you? How often do you change the zip code like I told you? He says, oh, I think I only did it the one time you told me. And I said, I mean, that, you can't control if leads come in. You can't really control if you win it. You can control how fast you respond, but you can control how often you open the app. And so, you got to be realistic with yourself on how undisciplined you might be. And to be honest, I'm very undisciplined. Carly, my girlfriend, she is the assistant to the director of Placer Food Bank. Well, she calls me a lot and she says, he wants me to type up these draft emails and send him all these reminders and blah, blah, blah. And I just don't know why he's asking so much of me. And I said, well, to be honest, it sounds a lot like me. You may type up draft emails, but I'm going to totally forget that you even did that and that they're in there ready to go. Unless if you send me reminders multiple times a day, and good on him for recognizing that he is probably not that disciplined in certain areas and needs to put measures in place to make sure that he is disciplined. Hopefully that's making sense to a lot of you, that, you just have to realize, where am I not disciplined? What am I the most uncomfortable with? How can I find ways to make myself more comfortable doing this, right? So let's say I give you a script to call in the lead pond and you say, you're going to be uncomfortable, but you make 100 calls and you just say, I've made a ton of calls and I'm still not comfortable. How can you find ways to make that script and tailor that script a little bit differently that you feel more comfortable, right? I tell people, you can meet with a title rep and they can give you all this pretty print stuff that you can print and pass off in a neighborhood with all these reports. But do you feel comfortable handing that out to people? Or would it be?
I think you froze, Cameron. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I can't hear either. I thought that it was me.
I'm back. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, my mobile hotspot keeps randomly turning off. Yeah, so, and I lost my train of thought. Oh well. Yeah, you really want to make sure that uh you figure out, hey, where am I undisciplined? How do I make myself more disciplined, and how do I put measures in place to make myself more disciplined? Whether that's, like, for a while I had an app on my phone called the Habit Tracker, and I had, or there are other apps now, and I would literally make it a habit every day of at least opening the app and checking off what I did do every day. But you got to be realistic with your own time and your own schedule. So if I map out my schedule every single day, I personally don't believe in time blocking as much, because it's very easy for a client to call. Next thing you know, you're on the phone for 5 or 10 minutes longer than you expected, and there goes your whole schedule. And then you're frustrated, and it's hard to get disciplined because you're not keeping true to your schedule. But you need to know, hey, if Brittany goes and she starts work at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m., and then she has her kids right after for a couple hours, then they go to bed at, let's say, 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and she typically goes to bed at 11, let's say, and she wants an hour of her time to herself. Yeah. Could you put 30 minutes in? Would an hour be too much? Like, I know I'm getting a little burnt out this week with staring at my computer with a lot of things, because Dylan and I have had a very tough deal and blah, blah, blah. It just, I know that if I go to a coffee shop tomorrow and pull up my computer, I'm going to be over it pretty quickly. So what are other things I can do to maybe just change up my day? And that's what you really have to spend some time doing, and be very honest with yourself. But that way you can say, okay, let's say I have 30 minutes every evening, and on the weekends I really only have a couple hours. Well, what's the best use of my time? What's the thing I can do best? Is it making phone calls? Like, for me, I found, well, I've got a baby now, and I've got a girlfriend who wants me to spend time. I can't spend, I could spend 2 hours on a Saturday, every other Saturday, doing things, to grow my business. So if I spend 2 hours every Saturday door knocking, and I get through 15 doors in the 2 hours, or 20 doors in the 2 hours, but I spend 2 hours making phone calls and I can get through 100 phone calls. Well, what maximizes my time more? Once again, you're going to have to spend some time trying to track and do a lot of things to figure out what actually works for you. Like, I've had agents where I coach them, hey, when you're at an open house, if someone's leaving, tell them, hey, I'm not the listing agent or the seller, so you won't offend me, but what's your honest opinion of the house? If they love it, tell them, hey, I finished the open house in 30 minutes. I can help you put together a really competitive offer. At least you're asking for the sale. If they say they don't like it, or there's some things they have to think about, have a listing that is not having an open house nearby. Ask them if they want you to take them after the open house for a private tour. It might be one they're more interested in. I have used that a ton myself and gotten nothing from it. I told a few agents to do that, and they picked up buyers the first week and they tried it. So not everything is going to work for you that will work for other people. And I say that because there's a lot of YouTube videos with a lot of great ideas. I think above and beyond any other industry, in real estate, realtors spend a lot of money and a lot of time on a lot of crazy ideas. Some work, some don't. It just depends. Like, I've known people who, in big cities, like, I'm trying to think of the area, like high end, nice cities, they're the first open house they do like a block party and they invite all the neighbors and it's a hit. It's like a known thing that they do. They get a lot of seller leads from it through the neighbors. I've known lots of people who have tried it in our area and literally get no one there, and they paid for like a caterer to come, all this alcohol. I personally have done tons of raffles and had no one come, but that doesn't mean it won't work for you. And that doesn't mean that because it worked for someone else and they get a ton of business that only works for them. It could work for you as well. You just have to figure out, and you have to maximize your time and figure out, okay, what are things I can do? That's why I try to provide a lot of tools and resources for everyone, so that there's lots of ways for everyone to generate business. You just have to figure out, what do you feel, comfortable with. I've known people that made their first cold call, and the person answered and they just sat on the phone and they could not say a thing. They're like, and they just got so freaked out. But they could sit there and they could knock on doors and talk to everyone, and they were amazing at it. And so it's like, hey, maybe get more comfortable with that. And eventually you could get comfortable with phone calls. But if the door knocking works for you, then I would do that. So with that being said, there's door knocking, there's phone calls on our lead pond, there's sending text messages to leads on our lead pond, there's putting together email templates and creating your own smart plans. So if you want to try to reach out to leads and you have some time, I wouldn't do it every day, but maybe once a week or every other week, create a really pretty and an eye-catching looking email with links to your website that basically tries to get people interested. You can do that as well. There's ways to post things and send people links to your own branded website on Chime as well. We have our month or quarterly events. So the next one's a movie night. Even if we don't have the date picked out, you can let people know, hey, we're going to be having a movie night. Let me know if that's something you're interested in, and I can send you an email invite, the second we have it available. It's going to be very limited seating, but it'll either be in the Palladio or we'll be finding somewhere else. We're just trying to get approval right now. There's even just flat out asking people, hey, I don't know if you're ever looking to buy or sell, or if you know anyone, or if anyone needs some type of referral for a home improvement specialist, please let me know. I love the real estate industry and I just like to offer my services to anyone I know, and reaching out to people. We had a guy join our brokerage. He works a full-time job, so he's only selling things every once in a while. He chose our brokerage over another one, even though the other one, the guy had like 30 million in sales last year. But that guy said that all he does is cold call anyone he knows in the area. And he just constantly asks them, do you know anyone who wants to buy or sell? And he does that all day. That's what works for him. That's what he feels comfortable doing. If it works, it works. I knew a guy who he would skip trace. So you pay for it. It's like a 10 to 11 cents per property. And he met with Kaylee Cornell. He found out how he could pull distressed properties. So people who were possibly in pre-foreclosure, they filed a divorce. There was somehow there was like a life event. So either someone passed away or they filed for divorce, and he would just cold call and he'd say, hey, my brokerage listed a house down the street from you. Just wanted to call and see if there's any way I can help you in your real estate needs. That's what he said. That was his line. He stuck with it. His goal was 100 calls a day, every single day, no matter what. And he got quite a few leads from it. I think there are smarter ways to spend your time and your money, but that was what he wanted to do. I know other people who, when they work a neighborhood, they meet with a title rep. They find a higher end neighborhood with a pretty good conversion rate, but they pick houses that are all in a row. So they pick 200 homes and they budget themselves out and they pick gifts that they're going to drop off every single quarter. This is Nikki Tanner for those who know her. She goes, and so she spends about $10 a gift. $10 a gift. Some she gets a little bit cheaper. So 200, that's 2,000 a quarter. And she puts these little knick-knack gifts together, like a little jar of honey with this little bee, and I forgot what the slogan was, but be your best realtor or something like that. I forgot. I don't know if anyone else knows what she said, but she would drop it off once a quarter. And then she would knock on the door, drop it off, pretty much run away to the next house. And she did that for over a year. And every time she got a listing, she sent a just listed and just sold postcard to that same neighborhood. Did it about just over a year. And she's starting to get consistent business, right? She works that neighborhood, and then she eventually adds on a few more homes if she can manage it. So there's some ways where you could really overwork the business. Anytime you're going to go and invest your own money, you have to make sure that, how long does it take to get results from it, right? I like paying for leads for you all so that you don't have to invest your money up front. But when you start to get more established, maybe that's something you want to do. And so, definitely set up a time to talk with me, because you could buy big quantity leads through Chime, but you're going to have to make a lot more phone calls and hustle them more. Then there's realtor.com and Zillow leads. Realtor.com, you could spend a lot and get, half the amount of leads as Chime, and you're definitely going to have to make a lot of phone calls as well. And then there's Zillow, where you're going to spend a lot of money and not get a lot of leads, but they're going to be a little bit more, there's a higher chance of them being serious, but still the average close rate is 7%. 7% on the leads. So we have leads that are going to be coming in from Zillow. We're working to get qualified for Zillow Flex. If we do get Zillow Flex, they basically pitch me on the areas we have available. I have a feeling it's only the mountain areas, which I will say no to, because that means that those are the only leads we can get from Zillow. But yeah, so that's the kind of work habit that I know I had to plan out. So just to give a final example, when I first got started, same thing. It was like month 3, nothing. And I was freaking out because I had a lot of bills due. I was working for a friend and working at a restaurant. And I just wanted to make this happen no matter what. And so what ended up working for me is our brokerage had monthly giveaways or quarterly giveaways. They didn't really have events. And then they had like a pictures with Santa event. And I would literally every morning, it was my goal for 2 hours in the morning, add friends on Facebook until Facebook said I could not add any more friends for a couple days. I started another Facebook that looked identical, added friends until they said you couldn't. And then I went to the office that I tried to get around some people. So like for us, come to the coffee shop, meet with us, whatever. But then I assign myself 3 or 4 hours, depending on my schedule, to send messages and invite people as many times as I could on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, if I could, to basically, I just said, hey, my real estate brokerage is doing this monthly giveaway. I'd love for someone I'm connected with to win it. Please click this link. If you want to enter, I swear this isn't a scam. You can message me. So I just sent a quick message. I would send a couple hundred messages and I'd have someone say, hey, actually, we've been thinking about buying or selling. Could you help us? And I figured out, hey, that works for me and door knocking is not. And so I'm just going to hammer this every day. And I've closed, I think 4 or 5, maybe 4 leads just from Facebook, people I did not actually know. I just added them as a friend, sent them messages. So one has referred 3 different people to me. Another one, I just closed them. Another one was a neighbor, and so I ended up closing them. Another 2 were neighbors, and I ended up closing them on some other deal because they were watching me. I kept inviting them, and then they had a falling out with their agent. So I was right there, ready to steal them. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to add that would help the group? Or questions? Okay, I'm going to stop this then. But then the next question I'm going to ask, which for anyone who watches the recording to ask yourself is, what do you feel you're struggling with the most? So you can try to figure out, hey, especially if it's time, if it's being nervous or scared or not feeling confident enough or not knowing what to do. I think that there are a lot of people who say, I don't know what to do, maybe because they get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff you can do. I'm going to stop the recording, and then if anyone wants to